She had been in labor for 6 days, not 6 hours, not one night, 6 full days of pain. The doctors had checked everything. They said the baby is fine. They said the mother is strong, but still, the baby refused to come out. On the 3rd day, they called the elders. On the 4th day, they called the habalist. By the 5th day, even the habalist was afraid. He stood in the middle of the room, looked at everyone, and began to weep. He said, "I cannot help this woman. This is not sickness. This is not medicine." Then he pointed at her stomach and whispered, "This child is refusing to be born into a house full of lies." That night, the baby spoke. But before we go back to how it all began, pause for a moment. Like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know who is sitting with me for this story. In the quiet outskirts of a wealthy town, there stood a large compound that people spoke about with both admiration and caution. It belonged to a man named Balogu. Balogu was not just rich, he was respected. The kind of man elders greeted first, the kind of man whose words carried weight in the village council. His house was always clean, always busy, always full of life. But behind the tall gates and painted walls, not everything was peaceful. 2 years ago, Balogun's first wife, Titi, had died suddenly. They said it was illness, a strange one, fast and unforgiving. Before anyone could understand what was happening, she was gone. She left behind 2 children, a boy and a girl, both still very young. Since then, the compound had never truly felt whole again. After a long period of mourning, Balogu remarried. Her name was Fumi. Fumi was young, gentle, and kind-hearted. She had loved Balogun before he even noticed her. When he finally chose her as his wife, she stepped into the home with humility, determined to care for him and his children. She tried. She truly did. She cooked for the children, spoke to them softly, gave them space when they needed it. But children are not fools. They remembered their mother. And though they were polite, there was always a quiet distance in their eyes. Watching everything was Mama Balogum, Balogun's mother. She was a woman no one argued with, always dressed neatly, always composed, always in control. Even when she said nothing, her presence filled the room. In that house, everyone knew one truth. Mama Balogum was the real authority. Fumi respected her, feared her a little too, but she did her best to be a good daughter-in-law. Time passed, and soon, good news came. Fumi was pregnant. The entire compound celebrated. Even Mama Balogum smiled more often. It felt like joy had finally returned to the house. But sometimes, joy hides things, and sometimes it sits on top of secrets. Now, the day had come. Or rather, it had come and refused to go. Fumi had been in labor for 6 days. 6 long, painful, exhausting days. Her body was tired. Her voice was weak from screaming. Her strength was leaving her little by little. The midwives tried everything. The doctors came and went. They checked the baby. They said it is healthy. They checked Fumi. They said she is strong. So why was the baby not coming? On the 3rd day, whispers began. On the 4th day, fear entered the compound. By the 5th day, even the strongest hearts began to shake. That was when they called the habalist. He was an old man known for handling cases that had no explanation. If something had a spiritual cause, he would know. He arrived quietly, looked at Fumi, closed his eyes, touched her stomach. Then he stepped back. Something in his face had changed. Everyone watched him, waiting, hoping. But what he said next made the air in the room turn cold. I cannot help this woman. Everyone watched him, waiting, hoping. But what he said next made the air in the room turn cold. I cannot help this woman. There was murmuring, confusion, fear. What do you mean? One of the aunties asked. The habalist shook his head slowly. This is not sickness. He looked around the room, at Mama Balogum, at Balogu, at the house girls standing at the corner, at the walls themselves as if they were listening. Then he spoke again. This child is not refusing to be born. He paused, and his voice dropped. This child is refusing to be born into a house full of lies. Silence. Complete silence. Even the air seemed to stop moving. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. Balogum frowned, confused. Mama Balogum's face did not change. The herbalist picked up his bag. I will not interfere in what I do not understand, he said quietly. And then he left. That night, the compound did not sleep. Fumi lay on the bed, breathing slowly, her body weak, her mind drifting in and out. She thought she was dying. She thought maybe this was how it ended. Slowly, painfully, with questions that had no answers. Then, sometime after midnight, she heard it. A voice. Soft, calm, clear, from within her. Mama? Fumi's eyes opened wide. Her heart began to race. She looked around the room. No one. Just shadows. Just silence. She swallowed hard. Mama? The voice came again. This time clearer, closer, from within her own body. Fumi's lips trembled. Who is there? She whispered. There was a pause. Then the voice replied, I am here. Fumi froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Her hands gripped the bedsheet tightly. I am your child. Tears filled her eyes immediately. This was not normal. This was not possible. This was not real. But the voice, it did not sound like madness. It did not sound like fear. It was calm, too calm. Mama, the voice said again gently. Are you listening? Fumi nodded slowly, even though no one could see her. Yes, she whispered. There was a short silence. Then the words came, clear, steady, unshaking. They must tell the truth. Fumi's brows tightened in confusion. What truth? She asked weakly. The voice did not rush. It did not panic. It simply answered, all of them. Fumi's breathing became heavier. Her heart pounded harder. All of them? She repeated. Yes. A pause. And then the final words that made her blood run cold. Call them one by one, or I cannot come. Fumi's eyes filled with tears. Her body shook. Not from pain this time, but from fear. Because deep inside her, she knew this was not a dream, and whatever truth was hiding in that house was about to come out.
The night grew deeper. The compound was quiet, but no one was sleeping. Inside the room, Fumi lay on the bed, weak and sweating, her body tired from days of labor. But her eyes were open now, wide, alert, because the voice had returned. Mama, it said softly. Fumi swallowed. I am here, she whispered. There was a short pause. Then the voice spoke again. Call her. Fumi's heart began to beat faster. "Who?" she asked. "Call Mama Risi." Fumi turned her head slowly toward the door. Her voice was weak but urgent. "Call Mama Risi." The women in the room looked at each other in confusion, but no one argued, not anymore. They brought her in. Mama Risi, the oldest house girl, stepped into the room slowly. Her hands were shaking. Fumi did not know what to say. Then the voice whispered again. "Ask her what she saw in the kitchen the night before Titi fell ill." Fumi's lips trembled, but she repeated it. "Mama Risi, what did you see in the kitchen the night before Titi became ill?" Silence. Mama Risi froze. Her eyes widened. Then, suddenly, she began to cry. "I did not mean to hide it. I was afraid." Everyone in the room moved closer. "I saw Mama Balogum in the kitchen that night," she continued. "She was preparing a special tea. She told me it was for Madame Titi's stomach." She wiped her tears. "I believed her. I did not question it. Until the next day, when Madame Titi fell ill." The room grew still. "I wanted to speak," she said, shaking her head. "But I was afraid. I kept quiet for 2 years."